Aloha. You know, I realize that some of you don't know who we are, or what we do, or what the Radiance Center is. And so it would be my greatest pleasure to share this love story with you. So I'll just start by saying that my husband and I met in college, and we were both with other people at that time. But we became really close friends very quickly, and I guess maybe 4 or 5 months into our friendship, I walked into the soda shop, and that will tell you everything because it was 52 years ago, I think. We've been married for 50 years, half a century. Isn't that amazing? It's not what I would recommend for everybody, but it was right for us. So anyway, I walked into the soda shop, and he handed me a piece of paper and a pen, and he said, "Please sign this." And I had no idea what he was talking about, but I trusted him. He was a good friend. So I read the paper, and it said, "No matter who we marry or what we're doing in our lives, we promise to be friends forever." And that touched my heart so much that I just burst into tears, and of course I signed it. And I guess because somehow the signing it had taken us to a next stage, I guess. All our other boyfriends, girlfriends, it just fell away. And so we got engaged. And we were going to get married then, but all of a sudden, Joe got sent to Vietnam. And when he returned, a year later, oh my God, he was so severely injured, partly because of Agent Orange. Well, it was Agent Orange, but it damaged his kidneys. He had diabetes. It messed up his nerve endings so that he has great tremors, so much that sometimes I have to feed him because he can't stay still. Anyway, so there was that physical injury that he went through from the Agent Orange, but there was also the emotional, because he came home unable to say even basic things like, "I love you." Maybe that's not so basic to most people, but it was to us. And we were scheduled to be married in 3 months. And people kept saying, "Are you sure you want to marry a man who can no longer talk to you?" I mean, there was so much he couldn't do. He couldn't drive on the freeway over 30 miles an hour without freaking out. And he couldn't be in the same, he was a photographer in Vietnam, and he couldn't let a flash go off without him thinking that he was being bombed. But I remembered who he was before all of this trauma, this PTSD, and I knew that I wanted to be married to the man he was. And so we had a conversation before our wedding, about 2 months before our wedding. And I said, "I need to talk with you because I need to know how to help you heal from this extreme trauma." And somehow just me believing that healing was possible, I guess that's what allowed him to not give up. And so all of a sudden he found his voice and he said, "The way I can live with this kind of trauma is to dedicate our marriage, dedicate our life to loving so that we can balance and repair all that violence of war, not just for me, but for everybody." And so, of course, I was so ready to marry this man. And we got married to express that beautiful love. And surprise, surprise, that love was not so sweet not so constant. We fought endlessly. And at first I thought, this is a big problem. But then I realized that in order to be really together, we don't want this perfect, everything looks nice, shallow relationship. We want to get to the bottom of everything that does not bring us back to love. And so I can't even remember our last fight. You know, for a while we fought every day, and then it was every week and every month and every year. And now we just don't need to fight. We just go to each other and say, you know, I don't think I agree with that. Or can we talk about why you believe this? And it never, ever now has to be painful. So that clearing released even more love to give to the world. And so besides loving each other, we decided, we were on the porch one morning eating the granola that we had made and the yogurt that we had made. This was, I think, 1972 maybe. And I was just sitting there, and all of a sudden I had a vision, and I said, Joe, guess what? I just got a vision that we're going to have 20-something kids. And you know, he could have said, oh, we can't do that, or you're so crazy, or what could you be thinking? But instead he just looked at me, looked into my eyes, and then he said, you know, that would be fun. Let's do that. That'll be a place where we put the love. And so 22 years later, we had adopted or taken legal guardianship of 17 kids, very special needs kids. Many of them were fetal drug, and many of them had been physically, emotionally hurt, wounded. They had been burned, they had been raped, they had been battered, they had been neglected, they'd been starved. And all of a sudden we had to learn to love not just these children who had been so injured, but we had to love their parents, because they couldn't love themselves unless they knew that we also loved their parents. Wasn't always easy, but we learned so much. And over the 22 years, we had those 17 kids, and then people just started bringing us kids, more and more kids. They'd say things like, in the grocery line, they'd say, are you the people who adopt those kids? And we'd say, yeah. And they'd say, oh, you want mine? And their kid was standing there, right in the line with us. And I would just go over and hug the kid and say, no, this is your child, but I'd love to teach you how to parent. And so we did that. And over the years, besides our 17 legal kids, I think we probably had 25 or more kids who came to stay with us for days, weeks, months, years. And their parents always came and lived with us for periods of time so that they could learn to parent well. So what I want you to know is that these kids taught us not just how to survive, but how to thrive. They taught us who humans really, really are. And I'm certainly not saying that we were perfect. But you know what? Kids need heroes. They need their parents to be their heroes. And so all I had to say was, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to lose it with you, or you mean so much to me. And they would just say, oh, Mom, it's so easy to forgive you. We love you so much. And so they spent 22 years teaching us to love. And sometimes we only had the 17. Sometimes we had maybe 21, 22 kids at the same time. In the long run, we helped parent 40-something children, and they taught us to love. And then the kids took flight, and we moved to Maui to retire. But you know what? It's almost like people can smell love. They're starving for love. They're hungry. And we still, after the kids left, we had extra love to give. So we started counseling people in how to parent, how to be in relationship, how to be in alignment with their own divinity. And we were counseling, but it came to the point where I was doing maybe, I don't know, sometimes 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that was just too much. I knew that I couldn't stay in my balance and my joy that way. So we began teaching classes, and they started to grow. And so we outgrew our home. So we did the fundraising like we're doing now, and it always happened. So we founded a nonprofit, and we began teaching, as I said, parenting and relationships with each other and with the earth and with our own divinity. And the idea was to choose peace and joy, no matter what kind of childhood experiences all of us had had. Because we found out that almost everybody was abused. If they weren't hurt or lied to by their parents, there was the school system, there was the government, there was the churches. And so it became really clear that what we wanted to do was to help people learn to have great lives, functional lives, no matter what they had been through as a child. And so that they could choose lives of function and purpose and passion. And so we did our classes, and we formed our nonprofit center, and we did community service. And I guess the most important thing we did is that we became family. We celebrated each other's birthdays, anniversaries. We officiated at one another's weddings. We had potlucks. We did holidays together. I remember the first year when we'd just gotten another new and amazingly wonderful home. I said to people, well, I know that you probably want to spend Thanksgiving with your family, but if you happen to need somewhere to be, please come. And they came, and they came. 122 people, where you couldn't even walk through the room. But there was so much love, and so we would have circles of gratitude. So the center kept growing, and we had to find bigger homes. And now I'm reaching out to you because we need a bigger home once again. We are still feeling so much like we have more love to give. You know, my husband's disabilities, how can I say it? They became more intense over the years. And now, every time I go into dialysis or to oncology, because my husband now has both cancer and complete kidney failure. And yet, I don't think I'm in denial when I say he's not dying, no matter what they tell us about getting ready and signing the papers and all that. And the reason for that is that we still have more love to give. But I found out that I wanted to spend more and more time with Joe. And so when we both turned 73, I knew that I had been working on 5 different books, trying to express everything our kids had taught us. And so I decided that I wanted to retire, just hang out with Joe, just be in love, and to write for the next few years these perfect sentences that would exquisitely express everything we'd learned from the children. But every time my team got together, because all of my friends are also my students, so we formed teams. So every time we got together to write these books, it felt blocked, like there was some reason not to write yet. So I suggested that we take 2 weeks of prayer or meditation. And of course, 3 days into that meditation, I found out why I couldn't write the books, because the pandemic happened. And I understood finally that people couldn't wait for me to write books for 5 years or whatever. They couldn't wait for perfection. They needed proof of love right now. So I'll tell you a story. In the first Gulf War, I was so upset, and I'm not even quite sure why, because it wasn't about that there was another war, because that's kind of what humans do at this stage of evolution. But I'd say I was upset about the lies. So I went running into my apple orchard, and I lifted up my hands and I said, what can I do to be a blessing? And right then, it took maybe 30 seconds. The answer came. And the answer was, you can be living proof that there is a different way to live. And I realized that the people I was writing the books for needed the proof now. And so with absolutely no skill, and I could take that much further, I'll just say that with the help of my friend David, I started my own YouTube site. It's called The Spirit of Radiance, and I hope you'll go there. But there's no perfection in that. There's no notes. There's just speaking truth. And I get to include in The Spirit of Radiance, I get to include playlists that include my book on parenting, my book on relationship, my book on prayer, my book on being in alignment, my book on healing. I get to do it all. And it doesn't have to be, I'll just say the word again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to come from total love and total trust that whatever words come out of my mouth, they're the words that people need to hear. So I believe that this is a time of transformation. I hope you do too, because otherwise it's a pretty hopeless time. And what I want you to know is that we're in what the mystics call the undoing phase, the surrender phase. They often say that, the mystics say that becoming so-called enlightened is not about addition, but about subtraction. It's about letting go of everything that we've been taught as coping mechanisms, letting go of all the rules we've been given. So it's not about addition, it's not about reading more spiritual books, it's not about meditating more hours a day. It's not about proving how good you are. Instead, we're in that undoing phase where we just let go of everything that we've learned that does not lead us to total love. And so, in my school, in my classes, in my life, we just love. We love everyone, even the people with different politics, whether they wear a mask or not, whether they're mentally ill, whether they're mean and cruel out of their own fear. And right now I can't teach classes because we're in quarantine. But after the quarantine, people will again be coming from all over the world to see unconditional love in action, and then take it back to their communities, wherever they live, to help their families and their towns create different ways to live. So I want to tell you that when we were raising the kids, we had a sign on our front door that said, "Prepare thyself to be a miracle." And so I invite you to help us create this miracle. You can do it by helping us find a home, pay for a home, or you can do it by loving the unlovable, or you can do it by sweet kindness. I get to do it through my YouTube channel, The Spirit of Radiance. And let me tell you about the celebrations of love. This is one of the main projects of the Radiance Center. And the way it works is that I have 24 or 25, I'm not sure right now, families who the parent, if there's one parent, or the primary parent if there's two, that parent was extremely abused when they were children. And yet now they're trying to figure out how to raise children with empowerment instead of being victim. And so I talk to some of them every single morning. And in the celebrations of love, we never charge for anything. We live very simply. Money just comes in. But through the celebrations of love, everything that gets donated, not everything, because we have to run the center also, but almost every penny that gets donated goes to one of these families to help them pay the rent, help them buy school books. One of my favorite is to get dance classes for the kids. Whatever they need, help them pay college tuition. Whatever they need, we try to help. And we're there for just constant counseling, basically, anytime they need it. So, humans need to learn how to be in their power, not just by us taking care of them. So we also, in our next home, want property big enough to teach permaculture, because we are feeding so many people right now. I can't tell you how many hungry people there are. And so we have some gardens and some fruit trees, and we share with our neighbors, and we share with the food bank. We share with anybody who needs. But in our next place, we want to teach permaculture so that people can learn to be self-sufficient. People can learn to share their food. We can teach them how to grow food at their homes, or we can teach them how to grow food at our house and share it. And that feels so exciting to me. I'm so ready to add that to what we already do. Right now, it's so intense. There's so much fear in the collective. feeding each other worst case scenarios. And we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to change. And humans don't like the unknown. They need to feel safe. And I was realizing the other day that in the spiritual path, people go through a thing called the dark night of the soul. And in the dark night, everything that you've depended on to define you, whether it's your beauty or your health or your job or how much money you have or how people perceive you in the community, your reputation. In the dark night of the soul, all that gets taken away. I kind of think of it as anything that can go wrong will go wrong, and anything that can't go wrong will still go wrong, because we are no longer allowed to depend on the external for our happiness, for our peace. And that's happening, don't you think? Many of us are going through a dark night of the soul during the pandemic, during the loss of income, during the loss of home, during the loss of loved ones. And you know, often the dark night includes what I call the cave phase, where you go, if you were in India years ago, you would go into the cave and you would stop your busyness and you would stop trying to please other people, and everything that you had depended on would fall away, and instead the conversation is just between you and your divinity. So this is all much like the pandemic, much like this time that we're all going through together. And so the Radiance Center is needed even more, because people call up my answering machine. I know this is hard to believe, but they'll just call it over and over again and just listen to my recording. And when I say, "Why did you call me 11 times?" they'll say, "We just wanted to hear your voice. We just wanted to hear your hope. We just wanted to hear love." And so here we are, going through this time of death of the old and rebirth of the new. And after we finished with the death, and I do believe that's coming, many of us say, "Oh, I'm going to come out of my cave and I'm going to recreate my old life." And I say, no, please wait and wait again, because we don't want your old life. That's why the universe bothered to undo us, unravel us, destroy what we thought was true. And instead, what we want is the new life, not that we create, but that is created through us. Many people say that the lower chakras are about making things happen, killing dinner, working hard, whatever. And the upper chakras are about allowing what wants to happen, because it would be the greatest blessing. And so I invite you to join us in allowing this miracle. Not only because it's so needed, but because it feels so good to be a blessing. Love wants to support love. And many of us are confused for how we can make things better at this time in history. But you know, everything has changed for me. For example, even in my book of parenting, I'm no longer just talking in each chapter about how to parent. I'm talking about how to parent during a pandemic, during a time when we're stuck inside, during a time when we don't know how to take care. We can't even get to the people we want to take care of. But I promise you, it will feel so good to be part of a blessing. It's finally time, and we are so in awe. So thank you so much. Aloha.